Hello and welcome to We Random, episode 66, recording live Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. This is a podcast where we talk about random stuff. I mean, it's right there in the title, y'all. You should be able to figure that out. But first, B, I got a question for you. If a child refuses to sleep during their nap time, are they guilty of resisting arrest? Resisting a arrest? No? Yeah. More after this, everybody.
Almost Qualified Productions. We're 3 beers in. Time for you to catch up.
Welcome to We Random, episode 66. I'm Landmark. Out there is SKOINZ. Say hello to the wonderful people, SKOINZ.
What's up, everybody?
So tonight on We Random, as we always do, we are going to spin that wonderful wheel of doom. We are going to have a topic come up, and we are going to decide in that moment if we want to get mad online. Depending on the topic, it might be happy, it might be sad, we might be angry. We might say that we don't want to be divisive, but there might be people watching this podcast who want us to fail because of our viewpoints. But, you know, we might get into that, gentlemen, later. So, before we do that, do you have any wonderful words of wisdoms other than our favorite friend of the podcast, Mr. Rhythm, for our viewers, listeners, and otherwise loyal patrons before we get going today?
You know, just like we were talking about before we kicked up the recording here, just stay warm out there, everybody. It's like 9,000 degrees below zero. Don't go outside, and no matter how badly you want to smoke a cigar, don't do it.
You know who was outside right before this podcast? Me.
Oh, B, that's a bad idea. Don't do that.
I survived.
Good. We're glad you survived. We're glad you're here. And we're going to spin this wheel and talk about some great stuff. Some great stuff like Toronto MH. This actually is some good stuff.
Well, you know, okay, so here we go. Everybody, take a deep breath. This is probably our one story where we're not going to get mad online. All right. Toronto's long-awaited civilian-led mental health crisis response teams are set to take the streets in March. The city unveiled new details on its non-police mental health response effort, including a revised launch date in March for 2 of the 4 planned pilot teams, and it also included a plan asking for $8.5 million in funding to help these teams run. So what this is there's a community crisis support service team that is going to be the first of its kind in Toronto. This is similar to a story that we read a couple months ago about what they're doing in Colorado, where nurses and mental health support workers will be dispatched to specific calls instead of police officers when the call is about a person in crisis. So basically the way that Toronto is doing it is they've identified a couple of neighborhoods in the area that they feel like have the highest need for these people in crisis calls, and they will be testing this out to see how it goes. So this is already starting to happen in America, but our friends north of the border are getting on board too. So, as a thank you for getting on board with this, I would like to kindly ask the people of Canada to please send us Josh Lemo so we can not have the dude who leaves his goal. But we're not going to talk about the Milwaukee Wave right now. SKOINZ, what do you got on this topic?
Boy, B's really hung up on this goalie for the Milwaukee Wave. I'm just saying.
Hey, did you or did you not watch the game with me?
I did, but I might have not paid that much of attention.
I mean, there is also that.
Yeah. I mean, at least it wasn't Aaron Rodgers. Anyway, more on that later. So I think this is great news. We've talked about this type of thing a number of times. Part of the reason it's on here is just because it's more good news, positive kind of news stuff. I think the next, first of all, I think it's great that we're seeing more things like this being implemented. I think that's important. You know, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but there's situations where police just are not the best recourse, right? Like if my heater stops working, I'm not going to call my dentist and say, hey, my heater's not working, right? Like they're going to say, oh, great, what the fuck you want me to do about it, right? So there's a lot of situations where police are not the right people to go and handle that situation. So putting these types of groups together, I think is fantastic. I think the next big leap and what the most important and next big revelation is going to be is, how do they work? How are they working? Are we seeing, are we seeing results? Are we seeing people who are getting help versus people who are maybe getting arrested or getting, or worse, right? Beat up, hurt, shot, whatever the case may be. I think that's the next big thing that we need to see. I think it's great that we're starting to see more of these. It'll just be interesting to see if the results kind of match up with what we hope to see.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, in some ways, testing it out is really the only way that we're going to know, because obviously the more opportunities that we have for data in this situation, we can see, okay, so these are the calls that went well. These are the calls that didn't go well. What are some of the screening questions that a dispatcher might need to ask to determine who or what to send to a scene, right? Because obviously at some point, if we're doing this, there could be a scene where one of these teams gets sent into an active situation where somebody has a weapon, and then what happens, right? So are the dispatchers asking the question of have you seen this person have a weapon, or other things that might indicate that this situation is going to escalate, versus it being I'm thinking of something that's very specific to Milwaukee, but there's somebody panhandling in the middle of the median and we want them gone, right? You don't need to send the police for that. You can send this response team and say, hey, what's going on? Why are you panhandling? How can we help you? Whatever.
Right.
And if that person doesn't really need that help, they can figure that out. But if that person literally does need that help, then, the police officer's not going to be able to help them as much as a crisis response team might.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is a step in the right direction. My uneducated opinion, my unprofessional opinion, I should say. I think this is the direction that we need to go. And when we go back to all the calls to defund the police, which were taken way out of context, this is kind of the direction, right? We don't need as many police people if we are handling things with the right professionals. Although with some of the crime that's running rampant in our city, maybe you could argue we do need more police, but I'm spinning the wheel anyway, because we're keeping that as a more positive topic. And then speaking of positive, who is Synema?
This is old, not friend of the show, but we'll learn about her very quickly. Kirsten Synema. So Synema is a representative from Arizona, and a group of big dollar donors who have spent millions supporting her and other Democratic senators is threatening to sever funding to her if she doesn't drop her opposition to changing Senate rules in order to pass voting rights legislation. So Synema is growing increasingly isolated from some of the party's most influential officials and donors, including leaders in her own state, where leaders of the Arizona Democratic Party voted to censure her, which is a symbolic condemnation for people who they don't have any confidence in anymore. So it does nothing, but, it made them feel better about themselves. But basically, there are a couple different sides to this. So there are people who are really upset that she has aligned herself with more moderate or right-leaning kind of thinking. There are other people who are like, she's been doing this for so long, and any of you who have ever actually paid attention should not be surprised that these are the things that she's done. And then, you've got big business over here saying, hey, we gave you some money. You should be doing what we want you to do because we are a major corporation and we are sponsoring this event. So, there's a lot to unpack here. So how would you like to start unpacking this?
There's a couple different angles on this. And, part of me says this is a great story, and part of me says this is a trash story, and it's at the crux of what's wrong with our country. So I'm going to start with the latter. I don't even know how to get into this. Where are we at as a country that the way our elected officials are held accountable is by the people who are funding them under the table saying we're not going to give you money anymore? How is it that money has do you need any more proof that big business and money runs our country? Right? Like that's it's ridiculous. Like money should not be in politics in any way, shape, or form. And this is just this is just another example of how corrupt and horrible our system is. Now that said, I think it's kind of cool that the people with the purse strings are saying, "Hey, we supported you because we had similar ideals and similar beliefs and similar thoughts and ideas on the direction this country should go. Now all of a sudden you're changing your mind and you're not going the same direction. So why would we support you anymore? We're not going to." Like the fact that somewhere in here they're talking about how they want her to pay back the money if she doesn't do what they supported her to do. Again, it kind of goes back and forth, right? It's horrible that this is our system. But when you see somebody who is basically, give me all the money and I'll do whatever you want, and then they turn around and say, "Yeah, fuck you, I got your money, I'm gonna do what I want." It's at least nice to see somebody come around and saying, "Whoa, wait a second, we're not okay with that."
Yeah, I mean, like, the way that this hits me is and again, not a professional, almost qualified podcaster here, but a lot of these races, like, you have to meet a specific funding level to even be able to, like, be in the race and, like, all of these different things, right?
Yeah.
So going back to your point, like, money is 100% like the thing that these people care about. How much funding do you have? How many commercials can you run? How many businesses can you get to support you? And people will say, "Oh, I got the vote of this business or these people or this thing," right? So of course there's always major corporations in the background, like from this person to Delta Airlines leaning on the CDC to get them to change guidelines, from businesses when Donald Trump was president, like trying to lean on him to like cut down on immigration and having people come over here on visas to take jobs away from Americans and all of that, right? So this is the way that our culture is, and it's kind of just continuing to perpetuate itself. And I think I don't like it. I don't think it's good, but we're going to see as much of this on one side of the aisle as we are the other, because they're all complicit in who is funding them and what that means.
Yeah, we're wading around in a whole fucking swamp of shit. And we just found that one little bubbler of clean water, and it kind of feels good. Emily mentions that in the new Jurassic Park movie, the dinosaurs were sponsored by businesses in order to get their names in the new genetic dinosaurs, and we should force senators to represent their donors in the same way. I'm going to take it a step further, Emily. If you have ever watched a NASCAR race, I think that senators, anybody in Congress, they have to wear an outfit that has decals of every sponsor, everyone that's paying them. And it has to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the size of it has to be representative of how big their donor is. So, you're going to have all these senators walking down the halls of the Capitol. They have to have an entourage like they're a fucking rap group, because they're holding giant signs that say Verizon or Pepsi or Johnson & Johnson, because that's how big it would be representative to, Landmark, which is like maybe a little name on the thing here.
Right. But see, what's going to happen there is then you're going to piss off big business, because all of a sudden, Coca-Cola, who is supposed to be all about empowerment and voter rights and whatever, and here's, Marjorie Taylor Greene or like some rando that is voting against voter rights, and there they go with their big old Coca-Cola sticker, because their local Coca-Cola plant, signed off on them as the candidate in their area.
But that's exactly what it should be. If you're spending shady money to support shady people, it should be known. It shouldn't be like one website and one reporter who puts out a list of, hey, by the way, this is what, like, that's not what this should be. If you are a dirty company throwing dirty money at dirty ideas and dirty votes, you should be known. It's just that simple. Now, let's be honest. Vast majority of people aren't going to give a shit anyway, because I want my fucking Big Mac, and I don't care if McDonald's is funding lobbyists for X, Y, and Z, but it'd be a start in the right direction at least.
Yeah, it's just funny because like I opened Twitter this morning, and literally like the first 4 trends were boycott this, boycott that, boycott this.
Yeah.
Like everybody's wanting to boycott something when in reality they just want to complain.
pretty much.
So what are we complaining about now? What are we getting mad about?
I don't know how you pronounce this. ThedaCare.
Oh,
This was big news. This is exciting.
I called it ThedaCare, so that's what we're gonna call
ThedaCare it
them.
is. All right.
So ThedaCare, whoever they are the Wee Random.
The Wee Random Dick of the Week. Yes, sir.
So, I thought about giving this to Aaron Rodgers if he came up, but we're going to talk about these people.
He's getting it too.
Because a judge, literally a judge, in Wisconsin, of course, because Wisconsin, granted ThedaCare a temporary restraining order in a dispute with Ascension, Wisconsin. ThedaCare filed for a temporary injunction against Ascension, saying that it would cause the company harm by recruiting a majority of ThedaCare's comprehensive stroke team. So, 7 of the 11 members of the team at ThedaCare have now accepted positions with Ascension, Wisconsin to work at St. Elizabeth Hospital. One of the employees at ThedaCare, once they received an offer, took that offer to ThedaCare and said, "Are you willing to match this?" To which ThedaCare said, "No." Then, after these other employees heard about this offer, they all applied to Ascension too. And Ascension, being a company where major corporations are sponsoring this event, hired them. And then ThedaCare went to court and said, "You're hurting our community, Ascension. You know that this is wrong. You recruited our employees and you're harming us and the community." And this judge was like, "Well, you guys need to figure this out." And then on Monday, they didn't figure it out. So the judge lifted the injunction, and ThedaCare is now without 7 of its employees.
Yeah, so let me in layman's terms kind of how this thing went down. So Wisconsin is an at-will state, right? So you can get fired for any reason. You can quit your job and move somewhere else for any reason. You don't need to have a reason. So we have Hospital A, ThedaCare, and Hospital B, Ascension, and Ascension is hiring people for this, stroke care unit. And one of the Ascension people says, "Hey, I'm going to go apply and see what happens." And they applied, and they were given an offer that gave them better money, better benefits, better stuff, right? Like it was a better position for them. So they go back to their office, say, "Hey, do you want to match this offer?" And ThedaCare said, their words were, "We feel," and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote, but they said, "No, we're not going to match that because the short-term struggle that this is going to cause is less than the long-term pain that we would have if we actually gave you that, if we matched that offer." So they said, "Fine, I'm leaving." And they told their peers, and their peers said, "Well, fuck, why are we going to stay here for less money, less benefits? We're going to go over there." So they split, right? This is, ladies and gentlemen, the market working as it's supposed to. This is the way that these rich motherfuckers set the system up, right? Like they will tell you, if you ask them, "Why is milk so expensive?" They'll say, "Well, that's supply and demand. There's more supply. There's more demand than there is supply. So the price goes up." Well, guess what? My labor is a commodity as well. And it is worth more now than it was when you started paying me. So you got to pay me more. And if you don't, guess what's happening? I'm out of here. That's the way it works. But the problem is big business, as we already talked about, owns the goddamn country. So they go to a judge and say, "Whoa, judge, you can't do this. You got to stop it." And the judge gives them an injunction. Now, ultimately, he overturned that. I think the thing that is so disgusting about this, B, is this hospital used people's lives as a bargaining chip. They're trying to say people are going to die because of this. We can't have people die, and they're going to have to go to Milwaukee. That's like an hour away. It's like, well, pay your people more. Like you're trying to blame these 7 people and this other hospital, right, like they're the bad guys because they're paying a better rate, when the whole problem is you're a cheap motherfucker. You don't want to pay them what they're worth, because clearly they're worth that if the other people are paying them that, right? So you're trying to cheap out on it, and when they call your bluff and say we're leaving, now you're freaking out about it. You are an asshole of the week, and next week, and the week after that of the week.
Oh, dude, so, I mean, the thing about this, right, is that, like you said, they were offered the opportunity to match this, and from what one of the articles that I read said, they literally said no because the short-term cost of keeping you on is going to be worse for us. Like, we're just not going to do it, basically, is what they said.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
like it was just terrible. And I feel okay. There you are. For a minute, you froze, and I was like, no. So I just started like vamping. But now that I know that we're back, like that's the part about this is that they had their chance. They said no, so they've lost it. And the thing that like kills me is that this judge was like, well, we're going to give you all a chance to figure it out. Because this company is saying, oh, well, Ascension owes us money because they're taking our employees. No! You had the opportunity to match this offer, which is not something that they could have or should have given you. But they did, and then you said no, so that's on you, man. Like, again, everybody wants to talk about the free market and inflation and let the market do what it wants, but only when it benefits me.
Well,
Like,
and here's
no,
the
that's
thing.
not how
Let's
this
keep in
works.
mind, 2 weeks notice is a courtesy. It's not a require.
Right.
You don't have to give 2 weeks notice. You also don't have to show up and ask your employer if they'll match an offer that you got, right? Like
Right.
these 7 people could have left the office last Friday and showed up at the new hospital this coming Monday and said, hey, we're working here now. And then totally left them with in a lurch, right? Like they didn't even have to give them the 2 weeks, but they gave them that courtesy. Now, maybe the moral of the story, and this is, maybe my extremist view coming into play, but maybe the moral of the story is you get that new job, you just fucking bail and you say goodbye. Because let's be honest, the people that are paying our salaries, sorry, boss, if you're listening, like they're going to replace us. Like they would replace us without a thought, right? So I mean, I think people have to keep that in mind. So thankfully, it seems like these employees are able to move over. They can go to the new hospital. They can do the job that they want to do, and they're going to get paid, whatever it is they're getting paid. And hopefully the other hospital can figure their shit out. We'll see.
Yeah. Sure. There was an article that I just saw that they were kind of breaking it down, and they're like, yep, the at-will thing came into play because an employee can leave their job at any time, just as the employer can fire you at any time.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. They said that you as an employee don't matter, but when we lose 7 of you, oh, now it matters. You know what matters? It's that they're, I think it's a level 2 trauma center or something like that. That's why it matters. Distinction and money. That's all they give a shit about. As soon as you take that away, now all of a sudden they care. It's
because now
just
they have
typical
to recruit
business.
they have to recruit at the level that these other hospitals are paying. That's why they're
Well, that's another thing.
salty.
Yeah, that's the other thing. All right, let's move on from that, Dick. Let's get a happy topic. There's got to be another one on here. It's MTS Flex Ride. I don't know what this is. It kind of sounds like a porn video, but I'm guessing it's probably not. B, what is this?
I mean, we never know what our friends out in Butler and Menominee Falls are doing. There's a lot of people out there. So, MTS Flex Ride, which will launch in February, will pick up riders from one of 5 stops served by the Milwaukee County Transit System. These 5 stops are on Milwaukee's northwest side. Riders will be dropped off at a participating employer within the Menominee Falls and Butler service area. Riders can request a pickup using a smartphone app or by phone once they have registered for the service. Companies that are participating in this program so far are such as Freighter at Menominee Falls Hospital, FedEx, and Grace Commons, whoever that is. But for now, the service will operate weekdays from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. while working to identify funding to continue to secure the service. Currently, it's going to be funded by a $1 million grant. So, to break all of that down into terms that actually are more palatable for human beings, they are trying to recruit individuals from generally marginalized communities in the greater Milwaukee area and provide them transportation to work a job out in Butler, which is a suburb of Milwaukee, or Menominee Falls, which is also a suburb of Milwaukee, both which do not have public transportation because for a long time people in those areas said, we don't want none of y'all around here. But now, because of, the labor shortage and the fact that people don't want to pay livable wages, now they're like, we need anybody that we can get. So, like, this is kind of, to me, like how you felt about the Kristen Synema story, right? Like, in some ways it's good, but I'm also kind of like, well, you guys really kind of made your own bed with this one, so I don't really feel bad for you.
Yeah, I guess the way that I would look at this is, oh, hey, Max Headroom's back. He was gone the whole thing, and now he's back. Yeah, I guess you can look at this a couple different ways, right? Like, part of it is that the one thing that kind of feels a little bit off to me is this is some sort of a like a program that's tied to specific employers, right? So specific
Yes.
companies that they're busing these people to. And yet they're going to charge these people $3 for a one-way ride. Eventually,
Well,
it
and the
starts at
thing about this
$1.50.
is that if you think about it like that, though, that's a pretty common bus fare versus if you're Ubering that, that's $40 one way.
Okay,
Like
so
that's the lens that I took on it as someone who uses public transportation. So as an example, from where I live, town redacted, to my employer, name redacted. It's like 35 bucks one way. But if I were to take
A day?
bus, yeah, per day.
Jesus fucking Christ.
No, like one way, not even both ways.
Wait,
one way
you pay like $70 a day just to ride the bus?
No, that's for if I wanted to Uber.
Oh, I'm talking about a bus.
No, but I'm giving you the price comparison. Because if you were to say I'm going to Uber to work, it's going to cost you like $40 one way. As to where like this, you're paying $3 one way.
Well, sure, but my point is you've got businesses who build their business in an area of town where they can't recruit enough people to come work for them. And the response to that is, oh, well, we'll make it so that you can get here, but it's going to cost you $6 a day to do it. Like, what? Like, fuck you. Like, okay, I get it. I understand it's nice for the employees that it opens up an opportunity for them, right? Like I worked in an area that's, 30 minutes outside of the city, give or take, 20 minutes outside the city. And we had a lot of people from in the city who would come out there. And there was a lot of times that people that were working for me didn't understand, or they struggled being able to get to work, right? I understand that. I get that. I don't know. The whole fact that there's still a fee on that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But the long and short of it is, looking at it from the employee perspective, like, it opens up opportunities for people to get work. And I think that that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah, that like I said, that's why I said that there's the good and the bad, because and I know individuals who live in some of these more, and I guess to break it down for those of you who might not know the demographics of Milwaukee, like SKOINZ and I do, the areas that they're recruiting from are generally lower socioeconomic areas. The areas that these businesses in are definitely our higher socioeconomic areas. So people who live there generally, in theory, might have more money, more disposable income, might not necessarily be willing to work at a job that's going to pay them $10 an hour versus someone from these other areas where they live in a food desert and there's really no jobs in their local area that pay more than $8 an hour, right? Like, this is the kind of cycle that we've gotten ourselves into here in the United States.
Yeah, I think there's some positive to this. I also think that there's some dirty, negative, horrible shit to this, but I'd have to think through it more, and I ain't got time, so I'm spinning the wheel instead.
2022, baby. What you got for me, SKOINZ? Who are we?
Let's talk about some sexy candy, baby. Tell me about it.
All right, we gonna talk about them M&Ms. Is that what we're saying?
That's it.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are going to disappoint friend of the show, Tucker Carlson, because we're going to talk about the M&Ms. So, what we have learned is that the M&M company Mars has announced that its iconic M&M characters will be reimagined and redesigned in order to promote, quote, a more dynamic and progressive world. So what this means is that M&M promises to use the power of fun to include everyone, with a goal of increasing the sense of belonging for people around the world by 2025. So to do that, they are refreshing the brand of their caricature M&Ms, such as having a modern take on the look of the green M&M, who is going to swap out their heeled go-go boots for sneakers. They will also have the green and brown M&Ms begin to foster a friendly relationship to act as a force supporting women. The red M&M will stop being a bully and will be kinder to other M&Ms, and the orange M&M will, quote, embrace his true self, worries and all, to be in solidarity with the more anxious Gen Z. So, Mars said that they will begin to use imagery of all different shapes and sizes for M&Ms rather than one body size, and they will no longer ascribe prefixes to their M&Ms. So, there are people who are mad online about this because apparently some people want their M&Ms to be, I don't know that I want to use the word, Skonzi. Do you want to use the word? Do you know the word that I'm going for?
I don't know. You should use it.
So someone said that they want their M&Ms to be fuckable. And I am like, what? I don't understand. So, Skonzi, what are your thoughts on this? How do you feel? Does this resonate with you? Does this not resonate with you? What's your gut feel on this one?
Yeah, so, I'm struggling to put into words exactly how I feel. So I figure I'm going to borrow some words from a very intelligent individual who said, quote, M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, we've achieved equity. They've won. Unquote. Tucker Carlson might be the dumbest motherfucker on the planet. You know that? What the fuck is he talking about? Like, who wants to have sex with an M&M? An animated candy, for God's sake. What the hell is this guy talking about, B? I don't get it.
Drop. I need it.
Which one? That one? The Wee Random.
Oh, well, that, sure.
Of the week. This one?
The guy, the singing
they fucking
guy.
Suck. Oh, the singing guy. There he is.
That was one of the stupidest things that I've ever seen anybody post on the internet before.
Yeah, like I don't. Okay, so it seems like what M&M is trying to do, or Mars Company, is they're trying to make their characters more equitable, right? They're trying to make sure that equality is a message that they're sharing. They want to empower women and make sure that their characters are empowering women, which is a fantastic thing to do, right? I think it's a very important thing to do, and I think in today's day and age, it's something we need to see a lot more of. And the way that old Tucker Carlson decides that he's going to empower women is saying he's upset because he no longer wants to sleep with the brown M&M.
Right. Like, and I listened to Trevor Noah talk about this, and obviously Trevor Noah and Tucker Carlson are kind of on two different sides of the political spectrum, right? But one of the things that Trevor was saying is he's like, sure, fine. Like, he's like, I've never looked at an M&M and had any type of thoughts or feelings about its appearance or what it's doing. Like, I don't see myself in an M&M. So if they want to do this, fine. Like, how many people really see themselves in an M&M? Who knows? But if they want to try to do something and make things better, sure, let them do it. That's their prerogative, right?
I understand where Trevor Noah's coming from, but he's a pretty young guy. I don't think that he knows the sex appeal of the California raisins. Oh my God, let me tell you about them. I don't get it. Tucker Carlson is so stupid. I got nothing more to say. Like, it's so dumb.
We need to play the Joe Biden. Did you see Joe Biden?
He's a stupid son of a bitch. I got a message from Joe today. He sent it to me. He's like, dude, you need to add this sound to the thing. So I'm like, all right.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, we need that on the podcast. Gotta make it on the posted note.
I did spin the wheel, but before we move on, we've got Wig saying, A company is trying to move into today's world. They understand this will help them with some people and hurt them with others. If they are okay with this, shut the fuck up. I mean, that's fair. Emily, I don't know. I have a fistful of almond M&Ms, and they are pretty. Touche, Emily. Touche. All right. This is, where are we at on time? This is probably our last one, right? We're at 35 minutes. We might be able to do a couple.
We're doing good.
Apparently, not only is Eminem and Dr. Dre going to, be in the Super Bowl halftime show, but I guess they're going to rap in court too or something, I guess. I don't know. Tell us what this is.
This is not Eminem, but JayZ, old Sean Carter, is leading a list of music industry titans, including Meek Mill, Big Sean, Fat Joe, Kelly Rowland, and others, as celebrity signatures on a letter urging state lawmakers and ultimately the New York governor to make the recently proposed bill titled Rap Music on Trial a state law in New York. This law aims to stop prosecutors from using rap lyrics as a blueprint for alleged crimes. The letter reads, "This reform is urgently needed. Rather than acknowledge rap music as a form of artistic expression, police and prosecutors argue that the lyrics should be interpreted literally, in the words of one prosecutor, as, quote, autobiographical journals, even though the genre is rooted in a long tradition of storytelling that privileges figurative language, is steeped in hyperbole, and employs all of the same poetic devices found in more traditional poetry." So the way that this legislation would work is that it's aimed to limit the admissibility of a defendant's music or other creative expressions as evidence shown to a jury. According to the legislation, the bill would set a high bar for compelling prosecutors to provide clear and convincing evidence that a defendant's creative expression, such as a rap song, is literal rather than a figurative or fictional work. So, Senator Jamal Bailey, a sponsor of the bill, has said that presuming a defendant's guilt based on solely musical genre or creative expression is antithetical to the foundational rights and perpetuates the systemic racism emboldened and embodied in the criminal justice system through discriminatory conflations of hip-hop and rap with criminality. So I thought that this was really interesting, right? Because we've seen this a lot with not necessarily like court cases, and apparently there are court cases that this has happened in, but we see this in like general like social media where somebody posts rap lyrics and everybody's like, oh, some people get mad and other people are like, oh, dude, they just posted rap lyrics, it's fine. But then when it's like, someone like it's okay for one person to do it, but it's not okay for this other person to do it. It's just like kind of a very interesting thing. So I thought that this would be good to talk about. As this hits you, how does this sit with you?
I kind of hate this article. I hate everything about it. And the reason why is because I think that there's no way we have enough time to dig into this on this podcast. I think there are so many different nooks and crannies. I don't think that there's any 100% correct way of looking at this. I think there's merits mostly on the JayZ side, the rapper side. I think that there's there were plenty of social media posts that you saw of people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th saying, horrendous, horrible shit. And you could argue that helps to explain their mindset and where they're at, right? I also know we all know that there's plenty of people in the rap genre and certainly in every other genre of music who are people who you wouldn't want dating your sister, right? They do horrible, some of these people have done horrible things. They've been involved in horrible things. It's not to say all of them are. They certainly aren't. It's not to say that everybody who writes something is doing that, right? It's not like Stephen King is on trial every time somebody gets murdered in Derry, Maine, because he must, I don't even know if Derry's a real place, but in the entire state of Maine, it's not like he gets hauled into court because he probably wrote a story about it. So, I don't know. I don't know exactly where I fall onto this one. I think that it's such a slippery slope, though. That's the part, is because you don't know what's fiction and what's real, right? Is Eminem out there beating up gay people? He sings songs about that. I don't know if he is or not. I don't think he is. I think he probably would have gotten in trouble if he did that. But Does the fact that he writes about it so much and raps about it so much, what is his mindset? Do you look at that and say, well, this is somebody who has, a homophobic mindset? I don't know, maybe not. How much of it is just art? How much of it is just, them putting some sort of thoughts down that maybe they have, maybe they don't? I don't know. And I think the problem is nobody really knows. And in a court of law, everything is really supposed to be fact-based. And I think that's where it gets super, super fuzzy to me. Yep. Like, I think you could probably look at things one way, but not the other, right? Like, I think you can look at things one way and say, hey, X person did Y horrible thing. And if you look backwards, they were writing about this and thinking about this. I don't think that you can say X person wrote about Y horrible thing, and then these many years later, they did this thing. So, maybe they did this thing, right? I'm getting my things mixed up. They wrote about this, and so now all of it is look at that's obviously how they thought the whole time. I don't think you can kind of do it in reverse that way, and I think that's the issue.
Yeah, and I think that's what this is getting at, because there was a case that I was reading about, I think in like California, where there was a rapper who like wrote a song that was like a beef song about some dude, and like they tried to use that against him in a court case, even though like the dude that he was beefing with wasn't at the crime that apparently was being testified. But they were like, see, in this song, he talked about having this gun and like putting somebody in his trunk. So it's obvious that he would have done this here too, right? Like they tried to kind of use that.
Well, I think back to, I used to listen to a lot of Eazy-E and Dr. Dre, and for a while they really, really, really didn't like each other. And so there was like album after album after album where they're just talking about how, me and my boys are going to show up and we're going to shoot you down and whatever. Well, like what would have happened if one of them got shot down? Like, you kind of have to wonder, like, was there something more to those lyrics? I mean, Tupac got shot down, and I don't know if they ever found who it was, but apparently it was, the belief is that it was some sort of, rapper gang battle thing. Like, I don't know. And that's what makes it kind of hazy, right? Is because I think that at times there is truth to this, right? Like it's rare that people are writing this shit completely fictionally. There's some truth to this stuff, but how much of that truth is legitimate enough to put into a court of law? And that's where I think, I don't know that you can do that.
And they use the example of like the, shot a man in Reno to watch him die lyric, right? Like nobody is pulling Johnny Cash into court when somebody dies in Reno, right? Like nobody is pulling, whatever country music person into court when somebody's car gets lit on fire because they're mad at their boyfriend, right? Like that kind of thing. So that's the kind of comparisons that they're making, is like people are singling out rap music where like these other songs, some still have this type of content, but folks don't get singled out in the same way.
Yeah, and I think that the other angle to that too, and this may make me sound like an asshole, and I'm sure this is kind of what the opposite side is saying, but you don't really have this epidemic of country music stars actually shooting at each other, right? Like that's not an issue. Like Slayer isn't driving by the Anthrax house with a submachine gun. You know what I mean? Like there's legitimately stuff in the rap world where this stuff happens. So I think I don't like that example, because I think that's more of an apples and oranges comparison. Now again, I don't know that it's legitimate this stuff should be used in court, but I also don't think comparing it to Johnny Cash is exactly a legitimate argument.
Well, and that was the thing though, like it's a song, and they're like, that's kind of how they're looking at it. I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but that was just one of the comparisons that was made.
Yeah, it's a horrible comparison. But all right, let's go ahead and spin. Do we have time for a spin? We got time for a spin. We'll do one more spin, unless you want to talk about, your best friend. Or do we want to talk about Tesla?
I mean, I don't know. We're probably just gonna argue about this one again.
we gotta talk about your best friend.
No, we can talk about Tesla, because this one is actually, because we're going to talk about, and I don't know who you're talking about with my best friend, but we're going to talk about the Packers in random rankings anyway. So that's kind of already baked in. So, Okay, so Tesla on December 29th of 2019, a 2016 Tesla Model S on autopilot exited a freeway, ran through a red light, and crashed into a Honda Civic. The Civic's driver and passenger were killed instantly. 2 years later, prosecutors in Los Angeles County filed 2 counts of vehicular manslaughter against the driver of the Tesla. Experts believe it's the first felony prosecution in the United States of a driver accused of causing a fatality while using a partially automated driver assist system. So, while these automated capabilities are intended to assist drivers, systems with names like Autopilot, Super Cruise, and ProPilot can mislead the consumer into believing that the car is capable of more than it really is. So, while the fully autonomous cars are being tested on public roads, automakers, technology companies, organizations that set engineering standards, and all these other people have failed to make it clear to the public, and in most cases to each other, what technical differences are and who is subject to legal liability when people are injured or killed. So I thought that this was interesting because I don't know, like we've touched on some of this stuff, and again, this is something that is totally like near and dear to my heart as someone who will never drive because, being blind. But I don't know. This is kind of interesting. So this person is being charged because they did not take control back of their car and stop it from running this light and killing people.
Yeah, so this is a really easy one for me. Like,
Yeah.
he's at fault. End of story.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's it. There's no other story. Like, this is not an autonomous car. This is not
Right.
a car that drives yourself. Despite the horribly named assist model, the Autopilot, which just chalked that up to one more thing that Elon Musk has fucked up in his life that still made him a billionaire. You still have to control the car. Like my car will pretty much drive itself. I don't have a Tesla, but it has lane assist, so it'll make sure that it's in the lane. It's got adaptive cruise control, so it'll slow down if I'm on cruise control, someone's in front of me. It will it'll automatically brake if somebody brakes in front of me or something like that, right? So it'll pretty much drive itself in a lot of ways. Now, obviously, the Tesla will do a little bit more, but you are still responsible. You still have to be in charge. And part of the problem, I think, with these assist technologies, as great as they can be, is that I think it lends itself to people who aren't going to be paying attention, who just kind of let the thing do what it needs to do, and they're not paying attention. They're on their phone or they're doing whatever they need to do. That's a problem because people still need to be, in control. You are still responsible. This is just an assist that the car is giving you. So the fact that it was on autopilot, I don't even think that matters. The point of the fact of the matter is you ran a red light and you hit somebody. That's your fault. End of story.
Yeah, and that's pretty much, I think, where it comes down to, like, that personal responsibility piece. Like, yes, this car is built to help you, but it's not, like you said, it's not a fully autonomous vehicle that you can just set it and forget it.
Yeah, I think the most interesting part of what this trial will be isn't whether or not this guy is at fault, because I think from a legal standpoint, they're going to say that he's at fault, but I think the argument from him and his lawyers or his legal team is going to be it's Tesla's fault because of X, Y, and Z, right? Probably they'll use the name Autopilot. They'll use the commercials against them, the advertising, all these things that Tesla puts out there, because let's be honest, they pretty much advertise this as you don't need to drive, it'll take care of it. And so I think that's where their angle is going to be, is that Tesla built up this false sense of security and that's why he's not responsible. But in my mind, you're 100% responsible. And I think the problem is that this could put a detriment to autonomous vehicles, which this wasn't necessarily. Like, maybe the autonomous pieces that it's supposed to have were malfunctioning. But the other thing is, and I'm going to kind of go off on a tangent a little bit, but when you think about how many car crashes and everything happen today as it is, autonomous cars, most likely, and I don't have the numbers to back this up just yet, although when I did a paper on this in my master's program, I did have the numbers, but autonomous vehicles were far and away safer than people in cars. They're just safer, they're better drivers, they do things better. The problem is it's a whole lot easier for people to wrap their brain around, hey, this guy is an asshole because he was driving and he ran a red light and killed somebody, than it is for them to wrap their head around, hey, the computer was driving and it ran a red light and killed somebody. Like one of them is, okay, that's tragic. You messed up. You need to go to prison. The other one is like, oh my God, end of the world. We need to shut down every computer ever. And they're not on a level playing ground. And that's part of the problem, right? Like you almost have to get these to 100% perfection before people will be okay with it. And it's never going to be 100% perfection.
No, it's not. And that's the variable, right? Because again, non-driver here, but pedestrian. And it's kind of one of those things where when you have two drivers, like you have two very independent variables that are happening. So as a computer, like the computer is written on if-then statements. If blank is within X number of feet of me, I do this. If they are not within X number of feet of me, I do that. If I sense this color of light, I do this. As to where random drivey, dude over here, like you're coming this way, you're turning, you like see that they're going to come, they're still like 300 yards away, the light is turning yellow, you know they're running that light even though they're not going to make the light. Right. So you wait to turn and then they blow the light anyway and then they honk at you because you waited to turn because you knew they were going to fucking blow the light.
Right.
That also happened this morning. True story.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like there's too many variables, and that's I think also what makes it hard.
Well,
because
the crazy
you can
thing
program
is
the computer as much as you want, but the computer's not going to realize the dude that's 300 feet away is still going to blow the light.
Well, and so there's two things. So one, you would be amazed at how well the programming can do to figure all that stuff out. And two, that's also part of the problem why they'll never be 100%, right? Because the horribly unpredictable, terrible drivers on the road are people who are going to do unpredictable things. Wig says with new technology, having and keeping a license needs to be reviewed. I agree with that. So there's a couple things that my car does. And the second one I might be making up, but I don't think I am. So one of the things is if I've got it on the lane assist, and even if I don't, even if I just have it on the, nudge me over if I'm getting over too far, if I'm not holding onto the wheel after a certain amount of time, or if it doesn't notice that I'm steering the car, it starts to alert me. Hey, you need to steer this car. I don't know what the end result is because if it ever does that, I make sure that I move the wheel so it knows I'm alive. And the second one is, I believe it watches my eyes, and if it looks like I'm getting tired, not like my eyes are getting drowsy or whatever, it gives me notifications on that too. So I think those are the kind of things that we need to build into these systems to make sure, like, dude, you've been looking at your fucking phone for 10 minutes. I'm shutting the car off. We're pulling over at a safe spot, and until you can pay attention, I'm not driving anymore. Now, obviously, that's a really extreme way of doing this, but I think that something like that is what we're going to need to get to so that people are actually paying attention when they need to. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. This is an area that I'm super passionate about because I feel like it's something that will save a whole bunch of lives, but it's going to come probably 50 years later than it should because people are stuck in their dumbass ways and because people are idiots, and it irritates me.
Well, there is that now.
So with that, it's time for Brian's favorite part of the podcast.
Random rankings.
B, what are we talking about on the rankings this week?
So on the rankings, we can go a couple different ways. First, we are going to continue our gambling degenerate segment because you may not want the SKOINZ, but you've got the SKOINZ and you got to spend them. And then we can flex this topic. We can either talk about habits that the pandemic changed for you, or we can talk about the elimination of our Green Bay Packers. So I'll let you sit on that one and decide, but we will recap quickly how we did in the divisional round. So for me, I was lucky to have any SKOINZ left because I didn't get either of my SKOIN settings in Bengals Titans. I didn't get either of my SKOIN settings in 49ers Packers. I did get my 10 SKOINZ on the Rams. I also got my 10 SKOINZ on the Chiefs and 10 SKOINZ on the over. So I have a total of 60 SKOINZ going into the championship weekend. Skonzy, on the other hand, get his SKOINZ on Cincinnati, got his SKOINZ on the under. He as well did not get any SKOINZ on 49ers Packers. Did get the SKOINZ on the Rams. Unfortunately, did not get the SKOINZ on Buffalo. Still a wonderful pick.
Because the NFL
So-
overtime is stupid.
So SKOINZ has 100 SKOINZ for the championship weekend, and we can't forget about old man Wiggum, who he may not have wanted the points, he may not have needed the points, but he definitely needed the points because he bet 200 SKOINZ on the Packers and came up with exactly
0.
0.
All right,
No.
B, what do you got for the championship games? Because I didn't do that yet, so I need a second to figure it out.
The championship games, as I said, I have 60 SKOINZ to spend. So Bengals and Chiefs. The Chiefs are a 7-point favorite. And the over-under is 54.5. So not 55, but 54.5. But I am going to take 40 of my SKOINZ and I'm putting them on the Chiefs, baby, because I know that SKOINZ is taking Joe Burrow. And I don't have anything against Joe Burrow, but after watching the Chiefs, I think that they are going to get it done. So I'm putting 40 there. I'm also putting 10 on the over because I like points. Everybody likes points. We want some points to be scored. And if we look at this 49ers-Rams game, there ain't going to be no points in this game. Rams are 3.5-point favorites with an over-under of 46.5. I am putting my minimum 10 SKOINZ on the Rams because I have to spend at least 10 SKOINZ on this game. So I'm going there. That's my 60 SKOINZ. I may not be able to play the Super Bowl if I don't get this right. So I guess we'll see. But that's what I got. What do you have for us today, SKOINZ?
You know, in the grand scheme of things, I picked very, very well. My SKOINZ don't look amazing, mainly because I put 80 on the Packers game, but I picked really, really well. I'm going to do it easy. I'm putting 50 SKOINZ on each
50-50?
game. I'm doing 50 on each. I
Okay.
need to change the color, but we'll worry about that later. So we're going to
got
start with the Niners and the Rams. You know, I sent Brian a snarky comment last week as the Rams were beating the shit out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm big on the Rams. I think the Rams are legit. I think that I've always been a Stafford guy. He's not amazing, but he's good. And I think he's always kind of gotten the shaft playing for the freaking Lions, who are garbage. And that defense, the LA defense, is just insane. So
Yeah.
I'm going with the Rams. Brian already decided that I have to pick the Bengals and Joe Burrow. So I'm picking
you don't have to.
picking the Bengals and Joe Burrow. I'm not going against my boy, Joe Burrow. I'm taking him all the way. Good old Joe Burrow. I'm taking him and Jamar Chase. They're going to put up 78 points among the two of them, and they're going to beat the Chiefs, and they're going to the Super Bowl, baby. That's what I'm going with.
All right. Nice. So, those are our picks. We shall see how this works out for us. If we don't have any SKOINZ for the Super Bowl, we'll just make up new SKOINZ because SKOINZ is the proprietor of this podcast.
That's
so
true.
he can give us as many SKOINZ as he wants. So we've got that. So that is our continuation of Gambling Degenerates. Now, would you like to talk about the Green Bay Packers or would you like to talk about the pandemic? Which one is less depressing?
You know, that's like a literal coin toss. You know what? I think I can find more positive things about the pandemic than I can the Packers. So let's talk about the pandemic.
Oh, God. So I agree. And, you know, the thing about the Packers, so just to give you a heads up, loyal viewers and loyal listeners, we did put the Packers on the wheel, but there's really not a whole lot that we can say about this game, right? Like, we have to kind of wait to see how all of this drama plays out. So we're going to give you and ourselves a pass on this one.
Before we move forward, though, I have to say 2 words about the Packers. Aaron Rodgers, the wee random dick of the week. All right, let's move on.
All right. So there is is an article from BuzzFeed about habits that the pandemic changed. So it's pretty wild to think that it's been almost 2 years since COVID became a global pandemic and disrupted many aspects in our lives. SKOINZ and I will talk about some of the habits and things that have changed for us. So there was a thread on Reddit where people just like randomly listed things. I think there's like a list of 21 things. So we're not going to go through and like rank that list because they all don't apply to us. But if we want to pick something from that list, we can. And I just thought that this would be a good topic of conversation and hopefully a positive topic of conversation, because I'm not necessarily in the like mood or mindset to just be like, I hate everything, but more like, here are things that have like fundamentally changed for me. So I will start.
Okay.
And I will be completely honest. So one of the things that really changed for me in pandemic life is really understanding and appreciating the value of the work-life balance. Because we've always talked about far before the pandemic, oh, make sure you have a work-life balance, blah, 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 blah. But working during a pandemic, like, realizing that I can be productive in my time in the office, whether I'm actually in a physical office or in this office that I am currently inhabiting. And the difference between getting up at 5:30 a.m., commuting for an hour and a half, sitting in my office for 8 hours, commuting for an hour and a half, getting home, having 2 hours to eat and do whatever before I got to go to bed and do it all again, and getting up at a reasonable time in the morning. It's not like I'm getting up at 10 o'clock. I'm getting up at like 6:30, but having an hour or so to just like relax and not like rush to like leave the house and do this and commute, blah, 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 and like get ready for my day and then get to my computer and do work and have productive conversations. And then, if my day runs long, like it's okay. I can sit here for a little longer and finish things up because I don't have to worry about missing buses or commuting or going home. Like, I've really realized the value of that true work-life balance, and like, I'm not here for that past life anymore.
Yeah, I think that's legit. And getting back to your point of let's make this positive, I think there's a lot of ways to look at things positively, but a couple of things I read through this list that really jumped out at me. Somebody mentioned handshakes. Like, I was very much a handshake guy. Like, that's kind of out the window at this point. Like it was, first of all, I don't go to the office anymore. Who was it that shook my damn hand?
It's me. I'm the only one that does it, and I know that I do it
You
because I
do.
know that you're a handshake guy.
You do.
And I hate handshakes.
No, it was.
Because as a blind guy, you never know how to get the hand, and then you do like the weird, like,
No, you're
and then
good.
it's
You're
weird.
good. You're good. No, it wasn't you. It was somebody else. Like somebody that I had a business kind of meeting with, and I don't remember what it was. It might have been the guy who's doing my snow. It might have been that. But it's like they put their hand out, and I'm like, oh, I'm shaking your hand. And it was that dude, because as soon as he left, I like held my hand out and I ran into the bathroom and I washed my hands for like 45 seconds. It's just like, it's just weird. And I know that I'm over the top with that, and that's fine.
Let's go. I have a story about that.
Okay, we'll get there. Just going out, like B and I used to have a thing when we saw each other less, where every Thursday, I'd drive up here, fucking 18 hours to get up here, and we'd go out on a Thursday night and we'd have some beers and have some food. Like, I don't go anywhere. And part of that is a really bad thing. Like, I want to go places. I just don't feel safe, and I want to make sure that I'm safe and protected, so I don't go places. Just hanging out with friends. I had friends that, we were going to do a monthly game night. I just don't feel comfortable at this point having, that many people hanging around. Going into the office, and I'm going to echo a lot of what you said. Like, my commute used to be, around 2 hours a day, both ways, give or take. And, you're sitting in traffic, and you're, fucking Chicago traffic, which is horrible. And it's just grinding, right? Like, it's not super taxing as in, you're physically exhausted, but you kind of are physically exhausted, and you're certainly mentally exhausted. And it's just time that's sucked out of your day, out of your life, that you never get back. Like, I was losing a day every couple of weeks just in commuting. It was insane. Like, a day out of my life every couple of weeks, just gone. It's insane. And so, I've really grown to appreciate, working from home and having some of that flexibility. And, like today, I had a half hour break between meetings and I used that time to gather up my garbage and go outside into the 12,000 degree below zero temperature and throw my garbage and my recycling away and then come back in and get back to work, right? I could take those 5 minutes without much of an issue and get something done. That's just one less thing I need to do after I'm done working. And that flexibility is super, super important. Like I legit never want to work in an office again. I just have no interest. So there's a lot of those things that I've really found the way that my life has changed for the better. And we've talked a lot on this podcast about the quote unquote great resignation. And I think these are the types of things that have really driven that, where people have found their happy place. Or on the flip side, people who work in customer facing roles and they have to put up with all these assholes who are yelling and screaming and bitching about stuff like, you don't have food and I don't want to wear a mask and you're a racist and whatever's going on. And these people are just like, I don't want to put up with that crap anymore. And I think that people are really using this time very introspectively to kind of look at what they do and do not like about their life. And they're starting to put those things into play. And I know that it absolutely has impacted me in a lot of ways. A lot of the ways I mentioned, a lot of ones I didn't. And so this has been a very, very interesting couple of years as like my whole outlook on life has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think about too is somebody put on there like not just going anywhere you want whenever you want. And like I take a different spin on that and not just doing everything for the sake of doing everything and being everywhere, right? Like I feel like before the pandemic, it's like we as human beings, especially considering that this is like the Milwaukee and like the Wisconsin culture, like especially in the summer, like every weekend there's somewhere to be, there's somewhere to go, there's somewhere to be seen. We got to be here, we got to be there, we got to go to the Brewers games, we got to go to the German Fest, we got to go to Summerfest, we got to go to State Fair. Like we got to be somewhere every single fucking day. And it's just like exhausting because like, sure, some of it's fun and like we want to do the things that are fun, but it's like the volume of it, like, and I'll be frank on this podcast, like we had this conversation about our Brewers season seats. Like we had a season seat holder plan and eventually we were just like, look, like the commitment of this plan is just too much to what we actually want to do and what we're actually able to do and make feasible. And there were other things at play, like the dude being a total jerkhole to us, but like we just decided we're not going to do that because if we want to go to a Brewers game, we're at the point where we can purchase tickets on a one-off basis and just go, and we can make that one-time commitment. Having that long-term commitment is just not something that fit into our life right now, right? And that's a huge decision that I think had we not had this pandemic, I don't think that we would have had the resolve to make that decision.
Yeah, we kind of just went chugging along. And I think, some people have just looked at this as a blip. It's just something that changed a couple of the things that I normally do. And I'm going to come out on the other side basically the same. And that's fine. No hate towards people that address it that way. But for me, a lot of things have come much more into clarity. And I'm taking steps in my personal life to do things that I probably should have done years and years ago and never did, but I'm working on doing now. And I think that's an important thing. And a lot of that is driven by these last couple of years. So yeah, a lot of interesting things. There's positives and negatives for sure.
Right. Yeah. Like some of the other things on here are, anywhere with a crowd and, let's see, greeting strangers with a quick smile. Like for me, again, this is blind person logic, but I don't miss any of that because if you're smiling at me from across the room, I can't see you. So then I'm a dick because I don't smile back because I can't see you. But now everybody wearing a mask, you got to like wave at me or say hello. And then I know that you're there. Right? So I think in some ways the pandemic has actually, this is another one. This is a good one. The pandemic has added so much more accessibility because restaurants have had to move menus online. There's a lot of services that have had to move to online functions where
Yeah.
people who need those accommodations, where they need to make text bigger, or they need a screen reader, or they need whatever, they can get that in the mode that they are used to, instead of having to go into a dark, dank restaurant and use their phone to take pictures of the menu, and then the waitress comes up and says, "Why are you on your phone? Are you ready to order?" I'm on my phone because you got the light turned down to 1 watt in here, and I'm trying to read which burgers you got. Like, also a true story. I have lots of true stories, but those are the kind of things that I feel like have changed and evolved for me. And I think one of the other things that's changed and evolved for me is my general advocacy, because before I feel like I was very kind of like isolated in here's my house, here are my things, like I am isolated from these other things, so I don't need to be concerned with what's going on out there. But now I am concerned with a lot of the things that are going on in the outside world, even if I am isolated from some of them, and we use our voice on this podcast to speak up about some of the things that we feel are challenging and that need to be addressed. And obviously, may those things ever be addressed? Who knows? Maybe they won't be. But at least, like you said in a previous extra point, like maybe that was the timeout, but you're putting your voice out there, and that's really all we can do, because there was a time where I didn't do that. So I'm glad that I'm doing that now.
Yeah, for sure. So Wiggum mentioned a huge bonus is school communication with parents. It's been increased in all aspects, and I'm gonna plus up that one, and then we'll move on. Probably get to the extra points, but I think that this has opened up avenues of communication. So I think so many of us, I say us, not me, but so many people are used to face-to-face communications all the time, right? Like, if I'm going to see somebody, I'm going to go visit them. And I think that being forced into this situation opened up some of those other forms of communication, whether it's texting more, emailing, or using FaceTime or Zoom, which clearly had a huge, business couple of years here. Discord, which we're using right now to do the podcast, all these different tools that are out there. And I think it really opened up that avenue for a lot of people, and hopefully helps with communication, allows people to stay in contact a little bit more. I know that even when there isn't a fucking pandemic going on, it's not super easy for me to get together with my family. They're a couple hours away. It's not easy for me to get in there. It's certainly not easy for them to get out by me. So, we just boot up Discord or Zoom or something, and we just have a conversation, and it's kind of cool because it allows us to kind of close that gap some. So, B, you got a last word, or you want to just jump into your extra point?
I mean, I pretty much used all of my extra point material here.
You got no extra point?
No. I mean, I wanted to end the podcast on a more like kind of positive note, so that's why I chose this topic, because I feel like, generally speaking, as we're building out the podcast, a lot of these topics that we want to talk about are the topics that have a little bit more kind of a positive or negative spin to them. And that was one of the things that I've tried to do, with building this run sheet as an example, like putting the thing about rap in there, because that's one, like you said, like that's a really bulky topic, but there's lots of ways that you can view it. So trying to keep the core of like, yes, a lot of the things that we want to talk about are things that we can yell about, but also just being more, well-rounded, whether that's doing a random rankings that's a little bit more positive, or having these extra points. I don't feel like I've had a lot to say on the extra point recently, because honestly, my life currently is survival mode, and it will be that way until further notice. So that's where I'm at.
All right. I totally threw it up on the extra point video thing. And mine is like, I gotta like duck way down, or otherwise it cuts half my head off. But anyway, so I'd been thinking a lot, this I hope Wiggs is ready. This extra point is going to kind of take the feel of some of the timeouts that I've done in the past. For those who aren't aware, the timeout is part of the extra time stuff that Brian and I do on the weekends or random times. It's basically extra podcast content that we push out to people who are patrons, subscribe on Patreon. That's the cue for Old Man Wiggum. Put the link out there. There he is. So I've been thinking a lot lately. I have conversations pretty much weekly with a friend of mine at work. And we set aside time, half hour once a week to chat. And then we end up chatting for an hour every time, guaranteed. And part of what we started talking about yesterday was mental health. Like, I think we're both in a spot where our mental health isn't where we want it to be. But we also have a lot of very in-depth political conversations and conversations about the social situations that we find ourselves in, the current state of where minorities are and all of the kind of stuff that, very similar to what you hear here on the podcast. And so yesterday I kind of brought up this duality between protecting my own mental health by stepping away, right? Kind of not burying my head in the sand, but like kind of going into the back room and closing the door for a little bit and sitting in the dark and shutting out the whole world, not listening to all the noise and the hatred and the putridness that's going on. And then the comparison of that to, well, if you don't do anything about it, are you just letting things happen? And I know that that's very, very vague, but Brian and I, we part of the reason that we do this podcast, the main thing is our way to stay connected, but it's also a way for us to try to put some good in the world, however we could do that. And I'm really driven by the fact that I see a lot of ugly happening, a lot of hate happening in this world, and I want to do something to try to help it. And that's kind of where this was coming from, is the more that I dig into it and the more that I read about it and the more that I speak about it or write about it, or the more that I'm involved in it, the more that it impacts me, and the more that it damages my mental health, the more that it weighs on my heart. And so we had a conversation about, do you just pull away? But if you pull away, then you're not helping any. But then on the flip side, can you help at all? Like, things are just so crazy. Well, we had decided that what we were going to do is we were going to chat today. We were going to have a follow-up conversation. And this morning, before we had our conversation, the link that I put into the chat here is an article that I get emails from this individual. So I open this email, and it's really about people on the right trying to control thought in different ways. And there's one specific section in this article where it talks about a bill, and I don't remember exactly. I only have a small snippet of it in my email here as my note for this extra point. But there's one snippet that talks about how if this bill is passed, parents can request a 2 weeks notice from the school whenever a teacher has plans to discuss, and this is a quote, divisive or controversial topic that may conflict with a parent's belief that all persons, regardless of race, ethnicity, color, national origin, or ancestry, should be treated equally, unquote. I'm going to read that one more time. Quote, a divisive or controversial topic. A divisive or controversial topic that may conflict with a parent's beliefs that all persons, regardless of race, ethnicity, color, national origin, or ancestry, should be treated equally, unquote. So basically what this bill is saying is that any conversation about equality is divisive or controversial. I know this extra point is taking forever. This blew my goddamn mind. Like, you are trying to put legislation in that says that people who any conversation on equality is divisive. I don't even have the words to express how this blows my fucking mind. So When I read that this morning, the conversation with Mike this afternoon was very easy. I can't shut up. I can't hide in the closet. I can't bury my head in the sand. I can't. Like, my voice is a very, very tiny one. Nobody hears it. You know, 2 people that are here, or whatever it is. This stuff ain't okay. And I'll be dead long before this makes a whole lot of difference, probably. But I can't stand by and watch this kind of crap happen without doing something. And maybe it's just spouting off at the podcast with a very small number of people who watch. Maybe it's posting it on my Twitter account that probably has even fewer people watching it. But doing something, trying to speak to my representatives, whatever the case may be, because this is the kind of stuff that's going to ruin lives. And yeah, sometimes I may need to take a break. I may need to, sit in that closet for a little bit. But in the end, I guess all this running around in circles. My point is, sometimes we just have to do. Even if we don't feel like it, even if we don't know how, sometimes we have to do. And sometimes that isn't easy. But my decision is that I need to do somehow. This is a start. I don't know that it changes anything, but it's a start. We'll see what else might happen at some point. But sorry I went so long, but back to you.
Well, I mean, that's quite a thing, right? Because those people who feel like everyone should be created equally probably also believe in other materials that definitely have not treated other people equally. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where you, loyal listener and viewer, can find us. So you can find me on Twitter at LandmarkMKE. If you like photos of the Milwaukee Wave, I post them there. If you want to find SKOINZ, you can find him on Amazon Sidewalk. You can also find him on Twitter at SKOINZ. You can find him on Facebook at SKOINZ as well. Please don't ask him if he has Cash App because he will block you. That actually happened to me this weekend. Another true story. But AQ_PROD on Twitter. Find us in your favorite podcast app. Look for We Random. You can find SKOINZ here on YouTube. Click the bell, subscribe, all of those good things. And before we let you go, thank you for joining us. I'm not going to have a word vomit weird ending to the podcast this week. But SKOINZ, do you have any other words of wisdom or greetings or salutations for our friends today?
I'm reminded of some advice that this guy named Mr. Rhythm shared. But
yeah, I got some advice too.
You'll have to tune in next week for that one, though.
Yeah, and I got some advice. When your special teams coordinator says that it's fixed, and then you have a blocked punt and a blocked field goal, it ain't fucking fixed.
They fucking suck. There we go. Wait, nope, don't boo. They fucking suck. Okay, I'm playing the music again. I'm so confused. I'm playing all this stuff. We're out of here. B, thanks for hanging out. Everybody out there, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next week.